You walk out of the bathroom, you think you're done, and then 30 seconds later, that familiar pressure returns. That quiet, nagging sensation that says, you didn't finish the job. If that experience sounds familiar, I want you to know something important right away. You are not imagining it. You are not being oversensitive, and you are absolutely not alone. Millions of men experience exactly this. The incomplete emptying, the repeated urgency, the nighttime trips that fragment sleep, the low-level anxiety that quietly starts reshaping how you move through your day, the adjustments you probably don't even notice anymore, mapping out bathroom locations before you arrive somewhere, hesitating before a long journey, waking at 2, then 4, then 6 in the morning. Here's what I want to challenge today. Most men accept all of this as simply part of getting older. An inevitable consequence of a body that's been running for 50, 60, 70 years. Nothing to be done. That belief is wrong, and I can show you exactly why. I'm Dr. Nora Hayes, a urologist with 7 years of clinical experience. And today, I want to walk you through a simple 60-second routine. Something you can try tonight that addresses the actual mechanics of incomplete bladder emptying and helps your body do what it already knows how to do, but has been prevented from doing properly. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is dedicated to honest, practical guidance on bladder health and urological wellness. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And right now, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to hear from you. Let's get into this. Here is the assumption I want to challenge before anything else. Most men, when they're experiencing incomplete emptying or a weak urine stream, instinctively try to push harder. Bear down, apply more effort, force the issue. And that instinct, while completely understandable, is actually part of why the problem persists. Here's the biological reality. Bladder emptying is not primarily an act of strength. It is an act of coordination. Your brain, your bladder muscle, your pelvic floor, and your urinary sphincter all need to work in synchronized sequence for emptying to happen completely. When that sequence is disrupted by tension, by rushing, by stress, by the subtle pressure of trying too hard, the system doesn't respond with more output. It tightens. Think of it like water flowing through a garden hose. When the hose is fully open and relaxed, water flows freely and completely. When it's lightly kinked, even just a little, the flow reduces. Water still comes out, but not efficiently, not completely. And you'd be holding the hose tighter the whole time, wondering why the pressure isn't improving. That is essentially what's happening in your urinary tract when tension and effort are in charge of the process. The shift that changes everything is this. Your goal is not to force the bladder to empty. Your goal is to create the conditions that allow it to finish naturally. That is a completely different approach, and it works. Let me walk you through what's actually happening in the body, because understanding the mechanism makes the technique make sense. The bladder is a muscular organ, essentially a hollow sphere of smooth muscle called the detrusor. When it fills to a certain volume, it sends signals to the brain indicating the need to empty. The brain, when the timing is appropriate, sends back signals that tell the detrusor to contract and the sphincter, the muscle guarding the outlet, to relax simultaneously. That coordination produces a smooth, complete stream. Now, several things can disrupt this coordination. In men over 50, even mild changes in the prostate region create increased resistance at the bladder outlet. The bladder responds to that resistance by working harder, and over time, working harder repeatedly causes the bladder muscle to become thickened, overactive, and hypersensitive. It starts signaling urgency earlier than it should. It starts sending incomplete emptying signals because the muscle can't sustain the contraction long enough to finish the job. At the same time, chronic tension in the pelvic floor, driven by stress, by rushing, by postural habits, by the very anxiety that comes from worrying about bladder function, constricts the urinary outflow even further. So you have a bladder working against resistance on one side and pelvic floor tension on the other. No amount of pushing overcomes that combination. Relaxation, coordination, and technique do. Breathing plays a central role in this that most people completely overlook. When you hold your breath or breathe shallowly, which happens naturally when you're tense, tired, or rushing, abdominal pressure increases and the pelvic floor tightens reflexively. A slow, deliberate exhale does the opposite. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and release state, and it signals the pelvic floor to soften. That is not a minor detail. That is the central mechanism behind the technique I'm about to teach you. Before I walk you through the routine itself, I want to name the 4 things that most consistently undermine bladder emptying, because recognizing them in your own habits is half the solution. Obstacle number 1, constipation and sluggish bowel habits. This is the most overlooked contributor to bladder problems in men, and I see it constantly in my practice. The bladder and the lower bowel sit in very close anatomical proximity. They share nerve supply, they share physical space. When the bowel is chronically full, even mildly, even without obvious discomfort, it exerts direct pressure on the bladder neck and the pelvic floor. That pressure increases outlet resistance and makes complete bladder emptying significantly harder. Many men experience a meaningful improvement in their bladder symptoms simply by addressing constipation through better hydration, gradual fiber increase, daily movement, and responding promptly to bowel urges rather than suppressing them. If this resonates with you, it is worth prioritizing. Obstacle number 2, rushing and hovering. The modern bathroom trip is often conducted under time pressure. You're between meetings, you're at a service station, you're somewhere unfamiliar, and you want to get in and out quickly, so you rush. You might hover rather than sit fully. You tighten your pelvic floor to speed things up. Every one of those behaviors narrows the urinary outlet and prevents the complete emptying your bladder needs. The 60-second technique I'm about to walk you through requires 1 full minute. That is not inefficiency. That is precision. You are retraining a coordination pattern, and it requires the time it requires. Obstacle number 3, breath holding. This one is subtle and almost universal, especially during nighttime bathroom trips when you're half asleep and functioning on autopilot. When you hold your breath or breathe very shallowly, abdominal pressure increases. The pelvic floor tightens in response, and the urinary outlet, which needs to be relaxed and open to allow complete emptying, partially constricts. The result is exactly the incomplete emptying you're trying to avoid. A long, deliberate exhale is not just relaxing in the general sense, it is a specific neurological signal that tells the pelvic floor it is safe to release. It is the single most important breathing intervention for bladder function, and most men have never been told about it. Obstacle number 4, going just in case. This habit is more harmful than it looks. When you visit the bathroom habitually, not because you feel a genuine physical urge, but because you're about to leave the house or you're near a bathroom and think you should go while you can, you are training your bladder to signal urgency at smaller and smaller volumes. The bladder is a trainable organ. It learns from repetition. If you repeatedly empty it before it reaches an appropriate fill level, it becomes progressively more sensitive and more impatient. This creates the cycle of frequent urgency that so many men experience, and it is driven partly by the very precautionary habit intended to manage it. The goal is to respond to genuine physical urges and then empty completely using the right technique. That is the pattern that recalibrates the system, the 60-second technique, step by step. Now, let me walk you through the routine. It has 4 steps, and together they address posture, nervous system state, breathing, and the bladder's natural wave-like contraction pattern. Step 1, posture. For men dealing with incomplete emptying, I strongly recommend sitting rather than standing for at least the first week or 2 of practicing this technique. Sitting removes the abdominal bracing that standing requires, allows the pelvic floor to settle into a more relaxed position, and changes the angle of the bladder outlet in a way that genuinely supports more complete drainage. When you sit, place your feet flat on the floor. If the toilet is particularly high and your feet don't reach comfortably, a small step or a folded towel under your feet makes a real difference. Lean slightly forward from the hips, not a dramatic lean, just enough to shift your weight toward the front of your thighs. Let your elbows rest lightly on your knees. This forward angle aligns the bladder outlet and urethra in a way that reduces resistance and allows gravity to assist rather than work against you. Step 2, breathing. Before flow begins, take 1 slow breath in through your nose. Let your abdomen expand naturally, not your chest. Then exhale through your mouth slowly for longer than the inhale. As you exhale, consciously soften your jaw. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the deliberate release in your lower abdomen. This is not decorative breathing. This is a direct neurological intervention. The long exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, relaxation, and release. It sends a specific signal to the pelvic floor muscles to soften, and it does it quickly, often within a single breath cycle. Allow the stream to begin naturally. Do not push. Do not bear down. If it takes a moment to start, that is fine. Give it the time it needs. Step 3, the pause. When the stream naturally slows and stops, do not stand up. This is the step most people skip, and it is one of the most important. The bladder empties in waves, not in one continuous flush. When the first wave completes, there is often a second, smaller contraction available, but it needs a few seconds of stillness to initiate. Most men stand up before it has the chance to happen, leaving residual urine behind that immediately triggers the next urgency signal. Stay in position. Count slowly to 10 in your head while maintaining your posture and your relaxed breathing. Keep your jaw soft. Keep your shoulders dropped. Step 4, the second release. After your count of 10, make a subtle, gentle movement. Rock your pelvis slightly forward, then back. Lean your upper body a few degrees further forward. Take one more long exhale, the same deliberate soft exhale you began with. In a significant proportion of men who practice this consistently, a second stream follows. It is typically smaller than the first, but it represents urine that would otherwise remain in the bladder. Urine that would signal urgency, again within minutes, send you back to the bathroom sooner than necessary, or wake you up during the night. Wait a few more seconds, then stand slowly and calmly. Total time from sitting down to standing up. Approximately 60 seconds. That is the entire technique. No equipment, no medication, no force, just the right conditions created deliberately, allowing your bladder to do what it is fully capable of doing. Let me share a couple of the patterns I've seen in practice because I think they'll resonate. A man in his mid-60s, I'll call him Bernard, was waking up 3 to 4 times per night and had largely stopped traveling because of bladder anxiety. His urological workup showed no significant structural problem beyond mild prostate enlargement. We worked on posture, the double emptying pause, and breathing technique. Within 2 weeks, his nighttime trips had reduced to 1, sometimes none. He went on a long-haul flight 4 months later without anxiety for the first time in years. The anatomy hadn't changed. The coordination had. Another patient, 61, recently retired, had noticed his stream had become progressively weaker and that he never felt fully empty. He had been compensating by pushing harder, which was making things worse. Teaching him that straining increases outlet resistance rather than decreasing it was the turning point once he stopped. Fighting the process and started creating the conditions for relaxation. His emptying improved significantly within days. These are not exceptional cases. They are representative of what happens when the right technique addresses the actual problem. I want to take a moment before we close and acknowledge something that I think is important to say directly. Bladder symptoms affect more than just the body. They affect confidence. They affect spontaneity. They affect the quiet dignity of feeling in control of your own physical experience. The man who stops suggesting road trips because he doesn't want to explain the frequent stops. The man who sits in the aisle seat at every event, not because he prefers it. The man who mentally calculates bathroom access before accepting any invitation. That kind of low-grade constant management is exhausting, and it is not something you simply have to accept. Your bladder is not betraying you. It is communicating through the only language it has that the conditions it needs to function well are not currently being provided. When you provide those conditions, the right posture, the deliberate breathing, the pause, the patience, the response is often faster than people expect. Complete bladder emptying is a skill of coordination and relaxation, not a matter of strength or luck. And skills can be learned at any age. That is a genuinely hopeful truth. Age is not the end of comfort. It is not the end of freedom. And it is absolutely not the end of feeling in control of your own body. The 60-second technique I've walked you through today is something you can begin tonight. 1 bathroom visit, 4 steps, 60 seconds of attention and deliberate relaxation. That is where this starts. Practice it consistently at every bathroom visit for the next week, and pay attention to what changes. Fewer return trips within minutes, fewer nighttime interruptions, a stream that feels more complete, more settled, more like it used to feel. Small shifts that build over days into a genuinely different experience. If this video gave you something useful today, please hit the like button and share it with a man in your life who needs to hear this. Subscribe if you're not already here. We have these conversations every week. And one last time, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if the incomplete emptying issue has been affecting your life and what questions you still have. I want to hear from you. I'm Dr. Nora Hayes. Your body responds to calm, precise action. Give it that consistently and it will respond. I promise.